Tonight, we begin with a development that U.S. officials had feared, analysts had warned about, and military planners had quietly prepared for. A move that unfolded not over weeks or months, but in a matter of hours. Hours that changed the strategic atmosphere across the Middle East. Hours that forced military commanders to make decisions in real time. Hours that could reshape the balance of power in one of the world's most volatile regions. What Iran did today crossed a line that Washington had hoped would hold. For years, both sides operated inside an uneasy system of deterrence. Signals were sent, messages were delivered, lines were tested, but rarely broken. Today, that line broke. And when it did, the United States did not hesitate. It responded with speed, precision, and unmistakable resolve. Because the target of Iran's strike was not symbolic. It was not political theater. It was the largest American military installation in the Middle East, the massive Udeid Air Base in Qatar, a base that serves as the command hub for U.S. air operations across the region. And when missiles or drones move toward a place like that, every second matters. Tonight, the world is watching closely, because what happened today could determine what happens next. For months now, there had been signals, not official statements, not formal declarations, just signals that Iran was preparing something unusual. Iran has always been strategic, yes, but it has also been cautious in its strategy. Its moves typically follow a pattern, a calculated pattern, a slow pattern, almost a predictable pattern. But what set off alarm bells in Washington this week was that the pattern suddenly went silent. Analysts who monitor military activity across the Middle East know the indicators. The repositioning of equipment, the movement of specialized units, the shift in communication networks, the sudden quiet in places that are normally active, all of that went quiet. And whenever Iran goes quiet, intelligence officials know something may be coming. Military analysts began noticing subtle changes. Supply routes that had been active suddenly paused. Command posts shifted communication protocols. Regional allies started reporting unusual activity near strategic launch zones. None of it confirmed anything. But taken together, it painted a picture that suggested Iran might be preparing to send a message. Early this morning, regional monitoring systems detected what officials described as a coordinated aerial launch signature. The data included flight paths and radar patterns that had not been seen in the region for many months. These are the kinds of moves that Iran typically deploys only when it is signaling something very specific: deterrence, escalation, or retaliation. Observers did not initially know which category this fell into, or whether it was a mix of all three. But what they did know was that Iran was changing its posture. And when a regional power shifts military posture without explanation even slightly, Washington pays attention. Within minutes, command centers across the region began assessing the trajectory of the objects moving through the air. The destination soon became clear: Udeid Air Base, a location that hosts thousands of American personnel and serves as the central command for air operations in the region. It is not just a base. It is a nerve center, which is exactly why it matters. The warning issued by U.S. officials today was not routine. It was not symbolic. It was urgent. Defense sources, after emergency meetings, described Iran's move as dangerous, provocative, and strategically calculated. But strategy only works if the target hesitates. The United States did not hesitate. Within minutes of detection, defensive systems were activated. Air defense networks began tracking incoming objects. Fighter aircraft were placed on alert. Regional command structures shifted into rapid response mode. These were not ordinary defensive measures. These were high-alert systems designed for situations where military installations may face real threats. The kind of systems deployed when commanders believe escalation could be imminent. Tonight, defense officials confirmed that U.S. forces initiated a series of defensive and strategic responses across the region. These actions targeted potential launch pathways and monitoring systems believed to be supporting the strike operation. They monitored the launch zones. They tracked command signals. They intercepted communications linked to the operation, In other words, U.S. forces focused on the infrastructure behind the strike, not just the strike itself. This is what made the earlier warning from Washington. Iran's move was not symbolic. It was actionable. It represented the kind of move that could trigger a chain reaction if left unchecked. And the United States, understanding that risk fully, responded with force. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but strategically. They did not escalate blindly. They targeted systems that could influence the situation. And that distinction matters, because it shows that the response was measured. And here is where the story becomes even more intense. Some analysts believe Iran's move may have been designed to test the resolve of the United States after months of rising regional tensions. Tehran may have wanted to see whether Washington would hesitate, whether it would limit its response, whether the deterrent system still held. Instead, the opposite happened. American commanders responded quickly and decisively. The response was so rapid, so coordinated, that analysts say it likely surprised Iranian planners. You do not get Iran's attention easily. But today, Washington did. Military experts speaking anonymously described the moment as a strategic probe, an attempt to measure reaction time and resolve. But the response demonstrated something important. The United States remains both capable and prepared. Its actions were not only fast, they were precise. Precise enough to show that the regional monitoring network was fully operational. That matters because it shows something critical. The U.S. is not passive in the region. It is actively monitoring and responding to developments in real time. As reports continued coming in throughout the day, we began learning more about the scale of the response. Air defense systems across multiple locations were activated. Regional command centers coordinated defensive measures. Surveillance aircraft increased patrol operations. This was not a small reaction. This was not a symbolic gesture. This was coordinated regional defense. And coordinated defense is exactly what Iran has struggled to overcome in past confrontations. For every strategic move Iran makes, American and allied forces attempt to counter it with layered response systems. That dynamic shapes the balance of power in the region. Remember, Iranian planners have long believed that pressure could push the United States to reduce its regional presence. They believed that persistent challenges might change Washington's calculations. They believed that escalation could reshape strategic realities. But events today suggest something different. American forces remain positioned across the region. Regional defense networks remain active. And the command structures designed to respond to threats are still operational. What makes this moment so significant and so dangerous is that Iran's move happened during a period of enormous pressure inside the region. Leaders across multiple countries are balancing competing demands. Some factions want confrontation. Others want restraint. Still others want diplomatic solutions. But when leaders face intense pressure at home, their decisions sometimes become riskier. And sudden military signals often reflect that pressure. The official statement from Washington was carefully worded but unmistakably clear. Officials said Iran's action was inconsistent with regional stability. That language may sound diplomatic, but in plain terms it means this. The United States considers the move unacceptable. And when governments use language like that, it usually signals that serious consequences are being considered. Meanwhile, American leaders address the public in measured tones. They emphasize that the situation was being monitored closely. They emphasize that U.S. forces remain prepared. And they emphasize that protecting American personnel remains the top priority. These statements were not rhetorical. They were signals. Signals meant for allies, adversaries, and observers across the world. What makes the situation even more complex is that the strike itself was not the only development. Regional tensions had already been rising. Other actors in the region have been increasing activity. Naval patrols have expanded. Airspace monitoring has intensified. When multiple strategic pieces move at once, it suggests that a larger contest may be underway. Analysts are now considering several possibilities. One is that Iran intended the strike as a warning. Another is that it was testing American response times. A third possibility, the one that worries officials the most, is that it was part of a broader strategy to reshape the regional balance. But today, the United States sent a message of its own. It did not ignore the strike.